What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Bayou Bengal Bites. It's currently Friday, May 26th. We're getting ready to watch our Tigers take on A&M in the SEC tournament. But first off, we got to run through the weekly rundown. So we're going to start it off with some unfortunate news from Tiger Town last night, or I guess yesterday evening. LSU fell to Arkansas 5-4. It was probably Paul Skeen's worst outing of the year. Would you agree with that, Tyler? It was pretty bad.
Yeah, it looks like he didn't have his slider working. It wasn't. Also, the umpire, don't really want to necessarily call it the umpires, but the zone was all over the place for both teams. So I think that Paul Skeens, every great pitcher, I said it to you, every great pitcher has an off day, and you want it to happen not in regional play. So I don't think that there's necessarily a panic mode on it, but I think that Paul Skeens will ultimately be fine. We saw him be on a pitch count. He threw 40 pitches in that one inning, and you just had to know that after that inning that he was done. So you want to save him, rest him up for whenever you'll have more meaningful games coming up.
Yeah, I mean, one positive thing was he was touching 103 with that fastball. That's the fastest he's thrown all year. It's just that slider. I mean, there was a lot of very questionable calls from the umpire. I mean, honestly, on both sides. And but LSU did lose 5-4. Of course, we had that fourth inning with the catcher's interference. I don't know how you call it interference when the guy still hits the ball. Okay, I mean, it shouldn't be ruled interference if he still makes contact. If it doesn't get ruled interference, you get out of that inning 2-2. Riley Cooper came in and got it done, and you're looking at a 2-2 ball game for the majority of the time. And Dylan Cruz hits that home run in the top of the ninth. That might be the game winner. Of course, we had some base running errors by Hayden Trubisky. Kind of got backpicked there around in third. That ended a very eventful inning, or potential to be a very high scoring inning. But I mean, positive notes: Hayden Trubisky, Trey Morgan. I think they went a combined 7 for 8 on the day. And then Riley Cooper, I mean, came out of the bullpen in a very tough spot. Yeah, he let up the 3 runs, but I don't really think you can blame him on that because he did get that third out until it was overturned. Came in, pitched the rest of the game, pitched phenomenal. I think he had 9 strikeouts, which tied his season high. So, I mean, we talked last week about the bullpen, but from what we saw from Thatcher Hurd and then Nate Ackenhausen and now Riley Cooper, I think the pitching staff is looking in pretty good shape going into the postseason.
Yeah, I would have to agree as well. I feel like going into we were talking even last week that this bullpen is not ready for postseason play, and it's going to be the negativity of how LSU is not going to make it to Omaha. But now in Hoover, we're seeing Thatcher Hurd step up against South Carolina. And then who would have thought that Riley Cooper would have more strikeouts than Paul Skeens on
really?
the day? If that was a betting line, I probably would have went with Skeens. But what a phenomenal showing by Riley Cooper. He let up that 2-run single after that catcher's interference. But after that, he really cruised, had 4 solid innings. And that's huge going forward. Now that LSU's in the losers bracket, you'll probably have Ty Floyd go on the mound today, and you still have guys like Blake Money, Christian Little. I know that LSU fans don't want to see Christian Little anymore, but you're probably going to see him. He's got to have innings because down the stretch, you're going to need guys like Christian Little, Riley Cooper coming down the stretch. So I think that the bullpen, if they can continue to pitch like this, LSU is going to be completely unbeatable going into Omaha. And so I think that it's definitely a mixed opportunity for them. So I think that if Ty Floyd can get another good starting pitching performance, then that definitely sets up for regional play next weekend.
Yeah, especially from the offensive side, the biggest issue yesterday was base running and leaving guys on base. You got to figure out, I mean, in the first game against South Carolina, I mean, we excelled at that. So, of course, Arkansas is a very good team, ranked number 3 in the country, I believe. So it was one of those things. Just didn't have our stuff yesterday. But, SEC tournament, not a huge deal for LSU right now. We're locked in at least probably a number 4 seed to go postseason. But it would be nice to see the Tigers get it done. Let's shift gears to some basketball news. Now, for a couple of booms that we got for basketball and football, men's basketball, Matt McMahon, he landed a center from the Kentucky Wildcats, Daimion Collins. He's 6'9", so big guy. He only averaged 1.9 points and about 2 rebounds this year. Didn't have a lot of playing time, unfortunately. His dad passed away at the beginning of the season, and I really think that impacted him. So he's primed to have a big sophomore year going forward. So I think it's just reload for LSU. I mean, basketball team can't get any worse than it was last year. So, what are your thoughts on this signing?
Yeah, I think this is another big get. I think that McMahon is definitely really going through this transfer portal. You already got Jalen Cook, who's a former LSU player that played at Tulane, and then you also got that Vanderbilt point guard as well. So you're starting to get some guys who have been in the SEC play. I know that Collins, you look at his stats, it's not really eye-popping, only averaging over 1 point a game and a rebound a game as well. But I think that Collins definitely brings a high upside to this team. Now that you don't have KJ Williams anymore, you need a guy that can take over in the paint. You got that George Washington transfer as well that gives you size at the center position as well. So, like you said, it can't get any worse from last year. This.
I mean, I guess it could get worse. You could not win a single game.
But. Yeah, you can win literally 0 SEC wins. But no, I think that this team is definitely shaping up to be better than last year. Matt McMahon got a lot of criticism. A lot of people are getting a lot of FOMO from that Will Wade era of the consistent winning, but give some time for McMahon, and this LSU team is going to be right back in the hunt for the SEC title. But I think that in the transfer portal, the way it has been, that's where you need to go after. So I think that bringing in Daimion Collins is definitely a huge get for the LSU Tigers heading into the new season.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely great to get guys from other SEC schools too, because if he's an SEC caliber player he's good enough to go to Kentucky, he's damn sure good enough to play at LSU. So,
that's true. Yeah, big bloods, a blue blood school like Kentucky, if you get really no playing time, like Collins got,
he only averaged 7 minutes a game. So,
and if people don't forget, he's a former McDonald's All-American, a 5-star recruit. But you're not a 5-star recruit just waking up in bed and just going to shoot some hoops. He is definitely a prototypical player that it's going to fit right into the system. You already got guys that can have pick and roll players. So I think that adding those 2 point guards from both Vanderbilt and Tulane will only help this team. They'll have additional shooters, because that's what I think that LSU, this team, has lacked on. Justice Hill wasn't what he was meant to be, and then Adam Miller decided to transfer out, and Adam Miller just didn't really live up to the billing. After that torn ACL injury, if he would have been really healthy for that one season when LSU had the guys to make a deep run, but I think that LSU, give them a couple of years, like I said, and they'll be back to the NCAA tournament.
Yep, you just rock and reload. Keep it going. So let's get on over to some football news. So Brian Kelly picked up a huge commitment from a huge guy, 4-star defensive tackle Daimion Johnson out of Westgate High School in Newberry, Louisiana. Gave his verbal pledge to the Tigers. He was number 9 on on the list of top Louisiana recruits for the 2024 class. 6'3", 280 pounds. He had offers from Alabama, Auburn, Texas, and Florida. So it's huge to see him stay home in Louisiana and come to LSU. I mean, this defensive front seven is just looking better and better. I don't know. It'll be another year before we get to see him play, but what are your thoughts on the big guy, Tyler?
Yeah, straight out of Westgate High School. So once again, Brian Kelly is locking down the state. We saw Juwan Johnson commit to the Tigers. Now we see Daimion Johnson as well. So once again, we just love bringing on the Johnsons. We have Jay Johnson, the baseball coach, and we got Wes Johnson. Now we got more Johnsons on the football team. So I think it's definitely going to work out as well. Like you said, he's a big boy. He wears number 9. I don't know if he's going to.
I don't think that's going to carry over at LSU.
Yeah,
but I think
Joe Burrow's number might be retired here in the next couple of years. But I think that this is also a big get for them. The way that you look at the depth chart right now, you have Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo as well. Both are juniors. So depending on if they have stellar seasons, both of those guys could be on to the NFL draft. So even if they stay, then you bring in a guy like Daimion Johnson, maybe redshirt him the first year, and you'll have guys like Wingo and Smith who will have 3-4 years under their belt in SEC play. So I think that the defensive line room is definitely outstanding as well this year. I'm definitely going to be curious to see how Smith looks after his injury. And Mekhi Wingo, he was a beast. He was an all SEC second team selection as well. So you bring in a guy like Johnson, who has a quick first step. He can get off the line as well. So I think that he's going to be a menace in the running game, and you definitely get pressure to the quarterback, and that's definitely what LSU needs going forward, especially if they lose both of those guys. But if they stay, then it's going to be
a problem.
That's going to be probably one of the best, defensive line groups in the country moving forward.
Yeah, people are talking about us having one of the best front defensive line this year. So imagine if Mason
Phew.
Smith, I mean, it's his revenge tour. He's definitely going to try to make it to the draft. I think he's got the talent to do it. But if he has like a slow year coming back from injury, bring him back, pair him with Daimion Johnson. I mean, it's gonna be an issue up there for opposing teams. So, like Brian Kelly said, these games are won in the trenches, and he's definitely
Yep.
proven it. We've got the currently ranked number 5 recruiting class for 2024. So, let's see if we can pick up some more commitments throughout the year. So, big game today, 3 o'clock. LSU takes on the Aggies of Texas A&M in Hoover. Of course, we saw LSU fall to Arkansas. We're kind of clawing our way out of the losers bracket in the double elimination game. Texas A&M started playing day one, took down Tennessee 3-0, and then I believe they lost to Alabama. Is that correct, Tyler? And then they found their way
They
over
lost
here.
to Arkansas.
That's right.
Arkansas
Oh,
won on a walk-off homer by Kendall Diggs, and then
that's right.
They
Extra
beat
innings.
South Carolina. But their pitching has been phenomenal throughout the SEC tournament.
Well, we'll see. This is the fifth game they're playing. I don't know how many pitchers they got left, but I mean, these are the teams that worry me when you just got the underdogs scrappy. I mean, they started off highly ranked. It was the first SEC matchup that LSU took on this year, and they kind of fell off afterwards. But the SEC tournament is where teams make runs to prove themselves to make it to the postseason. Now, LSU is locked up. If we lose today, it's okay. Get the guys some extra rest. But of course, the season we've had, you want to see us take home an SEC tournament title. It'd be great. Just icing on the cake. So, Jay Johnson hasn't announced the starting pitcher yet. By the time this video comes out, he might have. We're both expecting Ty Floyd. But Tiger, what are your keys to success for the Tigers today?
I think that, looking back on this matchup, this was the first SEC play for both of these teams, and LSU took 2 out of 3, and they were a couple of bad plays away. The pitching staff on Sunday gave up the lead late. This could have been a sweep for LSU, but they dominated in the Paul Skeens game, and then whenever Ty Floyd hit the bump as well, they dominated there as well. So you're not going to see really any of the aces anymore. Detmer already went for Texas A&M. But I do think that Texas A&M, like a lot of teams, is going to throw a lefty. That's what teams love to do against LSU. I think that
we seem to struggle when there's a lefty on the
they have struggled as well. You saw in yesterday's game, Arkansas threw 2 of their top aces, Hagen Smith and also Hunter Holland as well. That's about as good as pitchers as you're going to see. You're probably not going to see that in regional and super regional play. So this LSU team will be ready for that. But I think that Texas A&M, their pitching staff, like I mentioned, threw a one-hitter against South Carolina and also threw another one-hitter against Tennessee as well. So this is a team that's really starting to play some good baseball. They're just coming off of a series win against Mississippi State. And, going into SEC tournament, we didn't know if they were locked into the NCAA tournament, but they're definitely locked in as well. I would have to put them as a 2 seed as well. So I think that the keys obviously starts on the pitching mound. Ty Floyd, he's definitely been consistent probably since that Auburn game and the Ole Miss game as well. That really the 2 games that really uplifted him as well. And then the Georgia series, he had a good outing as well. So just to continue that consistent outing from Ty Floyd, because maybe Ty Floyd is probably going to pitch game 3, to bring you on to the super regional. Honestly, I'm changing my mind on how I'm doing the regionals. I'm doing Thatcher Hurd game 1, Skeens game 2, and Ty Floyd game 3, which I'm sure we will get into once we actually know where LSU is going to be playing. That's going to be Alex Box. But I think the keys to the game, you obviously got to do better whenever you have runners in scoring position. Too many runners left on base, and you can't have any mistakes on the base running, because that's what definitely cost you.
Yeah, that killed us yesterday.
If you look back at that play of Hayden Travinsky, literally the next play after Braden Jobert hit a deep fly ball, and guess what the score would have been at the end? It would have been 5-5, and we could have potentially been going to extra innings. So you can't have any of that. I've seen that way too much in the postseason. If you look back on the 2019 Super Regional against Florida State, Saul Garza had that base run mistake, and then Zach Watson and Giovanni DiGiacomo, that series was just filled with mistakes. So you can't have any of that going into postseason play. But I do think, to give my prediction, I do think that LSU will get the job done. Ty Floyd will go 6 innings, and we'll see Gavin Guidry. I think that he'll come in as well. He's yet to get an appearance in the SEC tournament. Or maybe we see Christian Little, especially if you get bases loaded 2 outs. That's whenever he
throw him in.
Does best. But you're ultimately going to see. I think that you're going to see Ty Floyd, Christian Little, and Gavin Guidry today, and I think that it's going to definitely be a lot more offense than we saw yesterday against Arkansas. I think that this LSU offense is going to be a little bit pissed off that they didn't really do their job yesterday against against Arkansas. So my final score is going to be 7-4. LSU takes this one against the Aggies.
Okay, I think big key is Dylan Cruz starting it off at the top of the lineup. The first 2 games of the tournament, he's struck out like the first 2 at bats. And I know yesterday he hit that big home run, but he's got to just start us off hot. You still say he's in a little bit of a slump. I don't think he's seeing the ball as well, but he's showing spurts of greatness that we know he can do. So I think if he starts off hot today, that's going to bode well for the rest of the lineup. You could keep him at leadoff, but I don't like pulling Tommy White from behind him because that's been the 1-2 punch all year. So we'll see what Jay Johnson does today. Pitching wise, like you mentioned, Ty Floyd will most likely get the start, and then I think you bring Christian Little in if you're up big. If it's a close game, you don't even touch him, and if you bring him in, he's got a very tight, short leash. So, but you got guys like Gavin Guidry that haven't pitched. Griffin Herring,
Griffin Herring hasn't seen the mound either.
What's his name? The curveball throwing guy, the lefty.
Collins.
Bryce Collins hasn't pitched. Of course, you have Javen Coleman, which I would imagine would start the next game if we were to win. And then if we were to win that game, I'm just thinking ahead to the championship. I don't know who the heck. Maybe Blake Money. You throw him out there. You don't
call somebody off the streets.
Yeah, exactly. I'll drive up to Hoover. I got 4 years of eligibility left. See if I can throw some strikes. But I think the offense, like you said, is going to come out pissed off and try to you just got to put runners in scoring position and base hits. You can't leave the bases. I think we left the bases loaded 3 times yesterday. That's just, you can't win doing that. So that's going to be the big thing, especially if you're starting pitch. Nobody expected Paul Skeens to struggle like he did, but the offense has got to pick it up when the pitching struggles. And this year they have been able to, just couldn't do it yesterday. So I'd like to see him bounce back against A&M. I'm going run rule today. I'm going 13-3. I think they're going to come out swinging and hot, and Ty Floyd's going to shut them down. So we'll see. We might look like idiots after tonight, but hopefully not. So you mentioned the postseason play at the box. D1 baseball current predictions is LSU a 4 seed or the 4 national seed.
Yeah,
with Southern Miss, Texas Tech, and UL Lafayette coming to the box. What do you think about that?
The D1 baseball just put out, they're doing daily ones, and it's still the same 4 teams, but they also have a new. So if you're looking at the bracket, LSU will play the 4 versus the 13. So right now, the Baton Rouge Regional will be LSU versus Nichols in the 4 seed, and it's the same other 2 teams. You have number 2 seed Washington, which has led by former pitching coach Jason Kelly. He's now the head coach for Washington. And you also had 3 seed Texas Tech, but now
so they swapped Washington and Southern Miss. Then I haven't seen that.
Yeah, so no more Southern Miss. Southern Miss hasn't really been projected in the past couple of weeks. I think that Southern Miss, the way that they have been playing, is now looking at a host. They could be a 16 or a 15, or now that Alabama and Auburn, that would make more sense since it would be geographically closer to them. So I think that if Southern Miss, they probably have the option that they're going to go to LSU. They're probably either going to go to Auburn or Alabama. If that happens, boy, Southern Miss would be a scary 2 seed. So that's the Baton Rouge Regional. But now looking at the projections, last week it was Oklahoma State. Yesterday it was Miami. But now it's an SEC team, so it would be an all-super. It would be the 13 seed Kentucky, and LSU took 2 out of 3 for Kentucky. But that series was very close. So in the Lexington Regional, it's Kentucky, Morehead State, Oregon State, and Kansas State as well. So what are your thoughts
on
LSU being paired up with an SEC school that they have already played?
I like it. I think it gives advantages to both sides because both sides have seen the starting pitchers. But it's not going to be, they're not going to throw a garbage. If, say, LSU and Kentucky both win, Kentucky's not going to pitch backwards because in the Super Regional, you got to try to win.
They threw some jabroni off the streets and gave up
he pitched like 3 innings all year. So I think it'd be Paul Skeens versus their ace, and that's the battle I want to see because in Alex box in a Super Regional environment, Paul Skeens isn't going to have the performance he had yesterday. So I like it. I think that's a good matchup.
I think we would match up well as well. I think that you look at the loss in that series. It was the Ty Floyd game. They were up big, and then Braden Joubert made that error. And
Yep,
that's what
and it
really
just
opened up the
compounded. Yeah,
floodgates as well. But if you look at all the other games, I know that game 3 was close, but game 1, I mean, LSU with Paul Skeens on the mound completely dominated. The run rule, you had 2 grand slams by Thompson. You also had Joubert as well. So I think that if Kentucky, I don't even think that Kentucky would even be safe as well. Oregon State is one of those teams that could definitely beat you. Kansas State is a team that's playing good baseball as of late as well, and LSU has faced that team already. So I think that you got to be liking that as well. I think that Baton Rouge regionally, the way that you're looking at it, Nichols, is going to be throwing the race as well. And you look at both of those matchups. So the first matchup, LSU run ruled them, and then Nichols, played Superman defense in game number 2 as well. So that would be a scary 4 seed, but I think that in the end, if you throw Thatcher Hurd in game number 1, that would happen. And then you have Washington, Texas Tech, and both of those teams, I just can't really figure out as well. So I think that LSU, in that projection, I would have them going on and facing Kentucky, and they would go to Omaha. So I definitely think I like that path for the Tigers.
Me too. So let's hit the around town news. So around town news, we are officially 100 days away from LSU versus Florida State Sunday night in Orlando. It's going to be, this game is possibly going to have playoff implications. Of course, we lost on the missed extra point last year to Florida State, Brian Kelly's first game. But I think we're going to see a completely different LSU team, and we're going to see a completely different Florida State team.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some great returning starters. It's gonna be a great matchup to start the season.
Yeah, this is like early on. It's going to feel like a college football playoff game. I think that, Florida State is by far the favorite in the ACC, the way that Clemson has been the past couple of years. LSU in the West, I think that the SEC West is really far open for business the way that Alabama is. I know that Alabama is going to be consistent, but you still have to replace Bryce Young, and that's not going to be an easy task. You got to replace Jahmyr Gibbs. So I think the winner of that game is going to be set up for the college football playoff. If I had to look at it, this is probably going to be a top 5 matchup. Florida State's probably going to be number 3, and LSU is going to be number 5 as well. So now it's going to shift to Orlando. I think that there's definitely going to be a lot more Florida State fans.
LSU travels good. It's not that far.
But I do think that the way that this game has been hyped, it's going to be more of a 50-50 split by the time it is. I know that LSU fans are going to be looking for some revenge in this one. So Florida State, if I had to look at them right now, they would definitely be a lock for me to go to the college football playoff. So not only could I see this matchup in week 1, I could also see these two teams back again in the college football playoff as well. I'm very high on both of these teams. Obviously, since we have our bias here on LSU, we're obviously going to be high on them. But Florida State is definitely going to be a way better football team. Jordan Travis is coming back. Their defense gave Jaden Daniels problems. So I think that, both of these defenses are good, but I think that this is going to be a high-scoring game. If I would have to pick a score, I would probably go 34-31, but Florida State, I think that the way that game ended, LSU has been circling this game. They've been waiting 365 days for this game. So I think that this is definitely going to be a treat to watch. Not only if you're, a Seminoles or a Tiger fan, I think that this is going to be the best game on week number 1. There's not really a week 1 game like last year where we were looking at Georgia versus Oregon. This is the game that everyone's going to be looking at. And I could even see College Game Day to take a trip down there as well.
I don't believe Florida State has a week 0 game this year, so that bodes well in our favor.
No Duquesne this year, so luckily have that going for them.
It sounds like you've got LSU winning this year on a May.
We're 100 days away, so that could change. But we'll definitely see how fall practices go for both teams.
Yeah, so that pretty much wraps up our weekly Bayou Bengal Bites. We appreciate everybody watching. If you're looking for more sports news, just check out our podcast over at Sports Scramble Podcast that we do weekly. And of course, our wonderful network, Belly Up Sports. You can get all your news from all over the country. But I'll leave you with the Go Tigers, and let's see if we can beat A&M tonight.